While crafting the state's next budget during the 2023 legislative session, DFL leaders promoted the idea of building an economy that would work for all Minnesotans. Senator Bobby Joe Champion is the chair of the Jobs and Economic Development Committee, and he joins me now to highlight some of the efforts to grow Minnesota's workforce and its economy. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Back in March, you held a press conference to promote the concept of a state match to compete for federal funding to make Minnesota a leader in bio, industrial, and semiconductor manufacturing. $350 million was included in the budget for that purpose. How do you hope that this investment will play out?
Well, that's a really good question, and thank you so much for having me to talk about this robust jobs bill that I think touches all across Minnesota. But specifically to your question, you know, one of the things that I think is important is for us not only to have an eye on the present, but on the future. And what can we do in order to make sure that we are setting up Minnesota and Minnesotans, you know, from the perspective of really benefiting from our future. So let's take, for an example, semiconductors. The federal government put forth $52 billion. $39 billion of that is for outreach and opportunities in communities that are traditionally disenfranchised. But it also helps the Department of Defense to make sure that we have chips and access to manufacturing, because the majority of our manufacturing is happening in other countries. And when we just had the recent experience of the supply chain challenges and how do we really make sure that we are positioning ourselves, we thought it would be important in order to say, hey, what are we doing in order to set us up for the future? That's also with bio and industrial manufacturing as well. Congresswoman Betty McCollum, who is so thoughtful in Congress to say, hey, we need to make sure that there are opportunities for states to really benefit from federal funding, but also having an eye toward the future. So it was important to think about bio industrial work where, you know, you could take a dandelion and convert it into some product that we all could benefit from. So my objective was to say, hey, what can we do in order to set us up as a state to be globally competitive, but also at the same time make sure that we are protecting our future.
According to a 2017 report from the Minnesota State Demographic Center, about 1 in 12 Minnesotans are foreign-born. According to the new law, the Department of Employment and Economic Development, often called DEED, will establish an Office of New Americans that will, in part, quote, foster and promote immigrant and refugee inclusion in Minnesota. So what is the rationale for this?
Well, let me tell you the rationale for it. I think it's important for us to get as many people into our labor market, really deal with the shortage and the backstop from our great tsunami. We have the number of people who are retiring, figuring out that they want to do other great things, and we want to make sure that we have individuals to do that. That also comes from where? Our immigrant population, but also communities of color, those folks who have been sitting on the sideline. So we wanted to establish an office that would intentionally look at this issue and how we might make sure our companies and corporations and new businesses and others incorporate as much diversity as humanly possible. So that office, I think, will be really intentional about fostering those relationships and advising us as to what can we do to be more attractive. Because remember, we're competing for labor and business owners with people from all across our state, especially now that people can work remotely. And you think in terms of some of our more challenging winters, you know, and someone might want to be in Arizona or some other place. But what can we establish and promote here in the great state of Minnesota that will intentionally draw a person here and say, no, this is where I want to live, work, and play?
So to further support the needs of businesses and to have a sufficient pool of workers, there's significant funding and programs that will provide job skills training and also promote the hiring of Black, Indigenous, people of color, people with disabilities, veterans, women, and low-income Minnesotans. So is this essentially then a concerted effort to try to connect every Minnesotan with a job?
The short answer is yes. And you say concerted, I say intentional strategy. It's an intentional strategy to say, hey, there are women who are wonderful and great, and how do we make sure that we aid and abet their efforts to live out their God-given dream, right? As well as those folks who are living with a disability or are veterans who've paid goodness forward by really serving our country. How do we intentionally think about them? And communities of color, as I mentioned earlier when you asked a question about the immigrant community, how do we make sure that we get as many people into our workforce and those who want to be business owners, and how do we help make sure that we aid and abet their efforts to live up to their God-given potential where we all benefit? Diversity is a great business decision. Because when you do that, guess what? You expand the opportunity for folks to want to come and not just work for your company and corporation, but be very productive. And you now get an opportunity to have another viewpoint that you didn't have before.
In various areas of the state budget, programs have been established and funding provided to address the critical shortage of child care options for working parents. The jobs budget establishes an Office of Child Care Community Partnerships to support child care businesses within the state. So what is the goal of this office?
Well, it is to do just that. How can we think about child care? How can we lower the cost of child care? How can we make sure that we infuse different individuals to say, I want to make being a child care provider a choice, whether it's residential, home, or commercial? How do we do that? And when I think in terms of child care, that is the singular issue that so many families wrestle with. Whether you are in rural Minnesota, urban Minnesota, or suburbia Minnesota, they all said, listen, we have to deal with this issue. So we're very intentional about it. So when I think about Senator Putnam, for an example, who on one day helped bring a cross-section of child care providers from rural Minnesota into our committee, and we already had information from our metropolitan providers. How do we do it? So the whole goal is to say, how do we deal with this issue? How do we make sure that child care is affordable? How can we make sure not only are there daycares or providers, but kids are developing in a way that they should, so that they can be on that route to that journey, I should say, of lifelong learning.
Funding was put in place to aid communities that were impacted by events beyond their control. The Promise Act will aid in rebuilding areas of Minneapolis and St. Paul that were damaged during the civil unrest following the murder of George Floyd. Money is also provided to northern Minnesota counties who were adversely impacted by the closure of the Canadian border during the COVID-19 pandemic. Why is it important to offer specific relief to these areas?
You know, I used the word earlier, intentionality, to deal with some of the challenges. One of the things that you didn't mention is that in rural Minnesota, we made sure that we're addressing their loss of population and their aging population. And how do we make sure that we are responsive? It is really about one Minnesota. How can we meet the needs of the various regions and communities in Minnesota and say, hey, we see you. We don't believe in a one-size-fits-all. Different communities need different things in order to make sure that they're able to really thrive and strive for an improved quality of life. And so really, when I think in terms of George Floyd and even pre-George Floyd, most people want to talk about George Floyd, but pre-George Floyd, communities of color were being intentionally disinvested in. And so we wanted to say, wait a minute, there are businesses that experienced some hardship that had nothing to do with them. That's Minneapolis, St. Paul, both North and South Minneapolis. But we also thought about greater Minnesota. That's why I talked about the loss of population. That is an intentional strategy for us to deal with that aging population. I'm now also on the IRRB, which is Iron Range Rehabilitation Board. And I've been up visiting so I can get a better sense of that region and what they really need in order to turn their economy around and diversify their economy, and how we see the people and not just the businesses, but the people, because those people represents families and dads and moms who really want to make sure that their quality of life is not just good for them, but for their family and for their community, and then we all benefit from that as a state. So it's about being intentional, really looking at what we all need, and really making sure that we really reflect one Minnesota. So just because I'm from North Minneapolis and Senate District 59 doesn't mean I don't care about Access North, for an example, that helps deal with independent living on the range. That's important to me because they are Minnesotans, and we care about Minnesotans.
One more question before we go. Explore Minnesota, prior to this budget, focused solely on tourism. This budget expands it into two divisions now, Explore Minnesota, which is still tourism, but also Explore Minnesota for Business. Is this an attempt to recruit more businesses to the state of Minnesota?
Yes. And they're both connected. One is to recruit more people to Minnesota, and so individuals will come. Maybe it's because they see some festival that's going on or so some opportunity, and they get a chance to come to Minnesota and look around and go, wow, I didn't know Minnesota has all these things happening, so that they can see that Minnesota is a great place to live, work, and play. And I want to emphasize work on the side of really trying to recruit individuals. And it actually goes back to my initial conversation with you when I said, hey, when individuals are making a choice, I want them to choose Minnesota and not Arizona.
Senator Bobby Joe Champion, thank you.
Thank you.